Good morning, YouTube. Today is October 11th, 2011, which makes it National Coming Out Day. Incidentally, it also makes it my cousin's birthday, so happy birthday, Heather. And I'm sorry that every year this also becomes the day that people come out, but happy birthday to you. So, it's sort of tradition that, you make a video or you tell people, and you come out on this day. Well, I've done that. I've been there and I've done that. And I've talked about how I've come out quite a lot over the last little while, but I have also worked really hard over the last year to be more out, specifically with my family and just in general. The only place that I'm not out at all is at work, and even there, I have mentioned once or twice being bisexual. So, I'm just not out as trans at work because I'm scared, frankly. The risks are just too high, which, I and Sydney Tinker and Trans Labyrinth, I think, have all cautioned before, against coming out when it's not in your financial best interest, or when it's a matter of safety. And as the person responsible for, taking care of my kids financially, it's a duty I share with their mother, but, something I take very seriously. It's not something I can risk. Excuse me. So there's not really much coming out left for me to do. But I did want to talk about a related topic, which is that of disclosure, which is a really dicey proposition for trans people. And a lot of this is going to be for the straight people watching, or the cisgender people watching, because there seems to be this conception that trans people owe it to cis people to divulge the entirety of our gendered history, oftentimes including our medical history, and that not doing so makes us liars, makes us stubborn or rude. So I want to talk about the cases under which it's justifiable to expect disclosure, and the kinds of disclosure you can expect as a random, general, cisgendered person. A couple things before I get into that, though. My flight is all arranged, and I will be flying out to New York City, eventually to get to New Haven, Connecticut, to speak at Yale's Transgender Awareness Week. It looks like I will be speaking on November 7th, the evening of November 7th. And we're not quite positive what it's going to look like at this point. At the very least, it's going to be a Q&A, so if you have any Qs, I will be happy to aid them. No, I'm working with my contact for the co-op there, and I don't know if it's okay to divulge her name, so I won't. We're going to do some brainstorming and figure out what it is that people may want to hear before I open the floor to questions. But it's going to be me talking about what it is to be bigender and what bigender is, and kinds of experiences that I have because of it. So if you're in the New Haven area, please do come out. I don't have the times, but if you go to, I think it's lgbtqa.yale.edu, and look for the link for Trans Awareness Week, you should be able to find more information as it comes available. Disclosure. So this came about because, this came up as a topic for me because I went to a wedding this last weekend, and it was the first time I went to a wedding as Brin. which, you know, was a pretty big deal for me. And it was for an old friend, and it was a really wonderful time. I was actually there weren't a whole lot of people attending, and I was one of the few people not related to the bride or the groom. So, you know, I was one of the few people who didn't know anybody else there. I only knew the bride. If I get a picture, if I can figure out how to do it before I upload it, I'll throw a picture up, like, right here. And then you can see what I look like. So I had a really wonderful time. I mingled, I talked to everybody, got flirted with a fair bit, you know, helped out the bride, got to sort of pinch hit as a bridesmaid since there was some military scheduling conflicts that kept her maid of honor at home. And, you know, it really was just a wonderful, wonderful time. And I passed really well. Now, I don't know how much I've actually talked about passing. I'm fairly lucky in that I pass really quite well in general. And if I'm not passing, people are generally kind enough that they treat me as if I were, which kind of at the end of the day is the same thing. I had to learn to let go of the investment in them, you know, believing that I was born female. Because as long as they're treating me like a person, then all's well, right? So anyway, I ended up having a conversation with somebody after the fact, who was flirting a little bit at the event, and then sort of flirting afterwards. I don't want to get into too many details because those aren't really important. What's important is that for a number of reasons, you know, I had to introduce distance to the situation. Not least which because, you know, I'm in a long-term relationship, and I'm not willing to jeopardize that for a flirtation. But secondly, because, you know, clearly that person didn't know about my trans history. So I had to explain to him that, you know, there's some stuff you don't know about me, and what I did, I just sent him to my It Gets Better video, which I think I need to redo fairly shortly here, because I think it's coming up on the 1-year anniversary of when I posted it, and I've gotten a little bit more comfortable in front of the camera, so it's so incidental to this. Anyway, so I sent him to that video, and he came back with a somewhat shocked expression. Were you born male? And I said yes. And then he asked a bunch of questions that are, I think, pretty standard fare for trans people, but I hadn't really been placed in the position of having to answer. But he asked if I had had surgery. You know, and a specific kind of surgery, not the surgery on my nose that I had to remove a bone spur. And I had to explain to him that it's not okay to ask that question, because it's just generally not okay to ask somebody about their about their genitalia. He's like, "What, you mean like girls' boob sizes?" Not quite what I was referring to. I phrased it like this. I said, no, I mean like asking you how big your equipment is, because it's no more okay for me to ask you that than it is for you to ask me about the size and shape of mine. And he seemed to get that. So, and then it didn't matter because he made assumptions anyway, because I didn't answer the question. We continued to have a conversation, and then he clearly had made some assumptions about what had and hadn't happened to me. But in all, he handled it really well, you know. And I think you know, for him it didn't matter that I was trans. What was more important was that I was in a relationship, which I think is, you know, the proper way that that should work. Again, though, I mean, he made some assumptions that, you know, I'm full-time living as a woman, which I'm not. But I didn't really disabuse him of that notion, because it just didn't matter. But, you know, it was one of the first times I was really put in a position of having to out myself in order to distance myself, or at least, you know, not quite distance myself, but more, I had to out myself just so that everybody had full disclosure with what was going on. And, you know, I don't hide in the closet. I'm not a closeted person outside of work. And I like living that way. You know, that's my choice. But it doesn't mean that I want to walk around wearing a neon sign that says trans on it either, or, you know, pointing at me either. Most of the time, most of the people I meet, I'm never going to see again, you know, when I'm out in public. But there's no reason that they need to know that, you know, I was born with a different understanding of gender than they do, you know. There's no reason that they have to know that sometimes I'm a boy and sometimes I'm a girl. All they really need to know is that at this moment, I am presenting this way, probably because I am feeling, you know, this particular gendered way. Let's see, where am I? 12 minutes. Oof. So, you know, they don't have a right to my medical history. So they don't have a right to know that I struggled with shame and fear and my gender my whole life. They don't need to know that I started hormones 2 years ago. And, you know, I tell all of you, I'm putting this out on the internet so strangers can find out, you know. I think I've even mentioned my bra size before. I don't hold a lot back, just in general. But you came to me. You came to my video to learn about me, to learn about being bigender. So I'm going to share information with you, okay? I don't have a problem with that. I'm a very open person. And if you're a prospective employer, now you know some more stuff. So don't let it affect the hiring decision, because it's against the law. You know, I share that information with you by my choice. You have not obligated me to do that. In fact, I think the question for last week was, you know, why are you taking hormones, blah, blah, blah. Well, that's the assumption I'm taking hormones. I think it's a pretty good assumption. But, you know, it also assumes that you have the right to know what I'm taking, why I'm taking them, etc. But my giving you an answer is not an acknowledgement of my obligation. It is my choice to give you, okay? But I think trans people constantly are given the impression that we don't have a right to privacy, that, you know, cisgendered people, and for those who don't know, cisgendered is the opposite of transgendered. So if you are not cis, you're trans. If you're not trans, you're cis, right? And being bigendered, I'm part of the transgendered community. So, as I was saying, cis people seem to carry this assumption that just by virtue of them being cisgendered, they have a right to information about transgender people. And they will ask us questions that they would never ask another cis person in a million years. Not with any, you know, serious expectation of getting an answer. You know, so it's not okay to go up to some random guy and ask how big his dick is. It's not okay to come up to me and ask me how big or extant mine is, you know? So, you know, I understand that people are curious. That's okay. I don't have a problem with curiosity, but, you know, I expect a little sensitivity too. Like this guy that I'm talking about, you know, when I explained that it wasn't okay, he accepted it and, you know, used it as accepted it as a moment of education and not, me getting unduly angry, And that's the other thing, too, is I think cis people sort of assume that we don't have a right to be angry because we're freaks. And because, we don't have a right to be offended because we've already transgressed so many expected norms and boundaries. But the fact is we're still people, and we're still, thinking, feeling, rational, irrational creatures, and are still allowed, dignity, privacy, and humanity. So try and keep that in mind if you encounter a transgender person and you have so many questions that you are just bursting to ask. Take a moment, consider whether or not this is something you would feel comfortable answering if someone asked it of you, and then, decide whether or not it's okay to ask. If, after all that, you've still decided it's okay to ask, then at least let the trans person know that you're going to ask something that is probably offensive. And then they can let you know that they may not answer it because it's probably offensive. But at least everyone understands. There's only a few occasions where I feel there's an obligation to disclose. To your medical professional, because if your doctor doesn't know your medical history, then he or she cannot treat you properly. To your significant other, because secrets in relationships are bad. And it would cause a lot of hurt feelings later down the road to find out that your partner has this whole history that he or she never bothered to share with you, probably out of fear, but, it leaves you in a position of not knowing things about your partner that other people are aware of. And generally, your sexual partner, especially if you are preoperative or non-operative. And this, I think, falls under the same category as sexually transmitted diseases in the point of disclosure only, okay? Being transgender is not a sexually transmitted disease, but I believe if you have one and you're about to engage in sexual relations with somebody else, it is your obligation to tell them, inform them, so that they can make an informed decision about whether or not to have sex with you. So if you are trans and you are going to have, you are going to have sex with somebody that you plan on seeing again, and or if you are non-operative and they're going to find equipment that is counter to what they assume they will find. I think once you reach the point it becomes clear that you're about to engage in sex, you need to, in a safe location, disclose so that you don't encounter a much more dangerous situation in private. But other than that, if you're in the grocery store and you see me and you clock me, that does not give you the right to ask any kind of questions. Okay? And now for those Yale students who may be watching me in preparation for watching my Q&A in November, you're going to a Q&A, so you're allowed to ask me questions. Just please try to understand, that I am a human and I'm allowed my dignity and privacy. So I may not answer them, and, but feel free to ask, because that's what you're there for. And I'm going to try and record that and post that up here, if possible. So, that's all I have for this week. It's almost 20 minutes, so I'm running into Trans Labyrinth time now. I also have to go get ready for work. I got my nails done, and so now I have to get them undone so that I can go to work like a boy. Yeah, I still have to get ready to go, and the sun is just now coming up. So I'm going to post this, and happy coming out day. For those of you who plan on coming out, please do come out safely, and good luck to all of you.